Okay. All righty. So let's just get this presentation started. And so everyone should be seeing the PowerPoint presentation. If you can't, just let me know. Right, so I wanted to thank everyone for coming to this year's certification training. Um, we will be doing a quick overview of the certification in LibPass as it happens this year once again, and then we will also look at some changes that are happening as well as a tour of the actual questions that are in LibPass. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the waiting room here. All righty, so let's see. So there are a variety of support materials available to you all for the certification. There are there's information about the policies and the process, as well as the link to log on to LibPass on the certification page on the OLIS website, which is linked here, as well as a link to the resource sharing certification LibGuide, which has sample policies and will also have the slide deck from today, as well as some instruction sheets and today's recording once it's available. Just a quick overview on some of the changes for this year. We removed those questions about your special collections, delivery, any kind of patron instructional spaces, and those database questions. We consolidated some of the services and equipment questions with the makerspace tools, as well as the technology support and instruction. So questions related to your website overview and what kind of classes or instruction that you provide to your patrons. And then we added a section to that technology and support instruction section about staff training. And then we also separated the electronic resources section from the digitization. So it appears that there may be a more sections or collections here, but I think it's actually a more streamlined survey. All righty. Again, a quick overview of the sections. They're pretty much the same in the beginning: the library identification, your resource sharing contacts, the accessibility questions, again, also the equipment inventory and services, the IT support, patron instruction, and staff training. And then the section on your digitization and your digital repository, if you have one. What you spend on your electronic resources. Again, we got rid of all of those database questions, but we are still asking some questions about your electronic resources. And then your interlibrary loan statistics from last fiscal year. And then the acknowledgement for the Lori standards and the ILL code. And just a reminder that the interlibrary loan statistics that you're reporting are those from last year. For public libraries, we ask that you do that section of the PLAS first, because that information will carry over into the resource sharing certification. For non-public libraries, you can just enter that information from last year. A quick overview on the timeline. So the survey opened on Tuesday. School libraries that received delivery got a link to the school year delivery survey first, but everyone else received the credentials for their log-on to LibPass. Today is our first training session. We will do a second training session in August. And then the deadline for submission for public, academic, and special libraries will be on September 15th, as it is every year. And then schools have that extended deadline until September 30th to submit and lock their data. All righty. And looking at the process, again, as I indicated, public libraries are asked to do the parts of the PLAS first, especially the interlibrary loan statistics, because that impacts the certification. And schools will do the school year delivery survey. So what we're doing is that we're asking schools that receive delivery to let us know what delivery dates they do not have open hours for school, so that we can make sure that delivery is canceled for them. And then once you submit your information in the survey in LibPass, it will be reviewed. If you are unable to meet any of the standards, you would need to submit a waiver for those. If it's a standard that's also part of the PLAS for public libraries, then you wouldn't need to send a duplicate waiver. And we'll get more into that later. And then finally, your library will receive the certification form via DocuSign. Again, public libraries will not get theirs until the public library survey data has been verified and that the minimum standards have been met. And then once we get the all clear that that has been completed, we will then send out the certification form for you to sign. And feel free to stop me along the way if anybody has any questions. So LibPass, the logon screen is the same as it has been since we started using this. For anybody that's new to LibPass, for public libraries, you will use the same platform for the PLAS as you will for certification. And you will also enter in your summer reading information in here as well. So once you log on, you just need to make sure that you're looking at the resource sharing certification. Again, for public libraries, there's a drop down where you can choose which survey you're actually working in, but always make sure you're looking at the 2025 period. Just another quick overview on LibPass. Any of the indicator codes, are listed on the left. So example, a delivery code will often pop open some notes that gives you a definition. It's called a tooltip. So it gives you a little quickie hint as to what that particular indicator is. For those fields that are grayed out, like your delivery code and your library name, those are pre-filled data, so you're not able to input data there. For public libraries, once you choose public as your library type, you will notice that the ILL statistics are grayed out because that information, again, is coming from the public library survey. So it's not allowing you to enter it here, which makes things much easier because it's pre-fed in their survey as well. You can navigate through the LibPass survey by clicking on each of the individual sections, and you can open and close them, and we'll take a look at that again when we get into LibPass. LibPass has an auto save feature. So in a perfect world, last year there were some glitches with it, but it should automatically save as you enter data. There is a save button on the screen, but you really shouldn't have to use it. And again, when you're all done, you will hit the submit lock button, and that will alert OLIS that you have submitted your survey, and then it's ready to be reviewed. If you accidentally submit your survey, which locks you out, you can just contact us and at OLIS, and we can unlock it for you. So taking a quick dive into the survey, again, the first section is identification. And again, the first two parts are pre-populated, so you do not have to worry about that information. And you only need to choose the type of library that you are. So you're either an academic library, a public library, a special library, or a school library. So schools are schools. If you're a public school, you are still a school library. And again, that library type designation determines which fields pop open for your interlibrary loan statistics. Section 2 are the key resource sharing contacts. So your ILL contact, we prefer that this contact is a general account that's accessible by multiple people, just because this is the account that is used for not only communications, but to receive any kind of LORI interlibrary loan requests. So if this is going to, say you're a reference librarian and they're out on vacation, no one is able to access those requests when they're out. But we do know that sometimes that's unavoidable. Your delivery contact, so again, anybody who's receiving your OLIS communications about delivery. Your resource sharing liaison. So often this is the director or maybe an assistant director, but it's another person in the library that is receiving those communications about Library of Rhode Island communications. It could be a delivery message. It could be something about resource sharing or certification. But oftentimes the LORI liaison will also receive what is sent out to the ILL contact and the delivery contact. So ideally, it's someone different than the ILL or the delivery contact. I know over the past few weeks, I've gotten communications from libraries requesting that an additional person be added to receive delivery delays or whatnot. So that would be an excellent use of having someone that's key in the library to be that liaison that would get those additional emails to make sure that there are multiple points of contact in the library. And again, for some libraries, it's the same person receiving all 4 emails. And then that last contact is your director or your head librarian. All right, section 3 is the accessibility. There are no changes to this year. Again, we're asking if you're a member of Talking Books library at the institutional level. So there's a link to that page on our website if you're interested, so that you can help your patrons access and download materials through the BARD system. But Alicia Waters here can provide you with more information about that. Any kind of accessibility guidelines that are available on your webpage, as well as assistive technology that's being used. And I've added this year a link to this website for resources about accessibility, because in 2026, there will be the federal mandates for accessibility on the website. Section 4, the computer devices owned by the library. Again, the tablets, laptops, and desktops that are used by staff and by the public, and then services and equipment provided for patrons. And this is where we had some consolidation. So we got rid of that extra section on makerspaces and combined it into one list of resources. So whether you have them or you don't for patrons. Section 5 is broken into 3 sections. So your informational technology and support. So what kind of IT support do you have for your library? How do you manage your website? And if you have an AI policy, we're just kind of curious to see what the changes are as AI becomes more integrated into library functions. Um, Patron instruction. So what kind of topics are you offering regularly to your patrons in a group setting? And then do you just offer a still one-on-one training for patrons? And that can be one-on-one as a walk-in or as a appointment. And then what kind of staff training do you provide for your staff? How is it delivered? Is it a designated staff person? Is it asynchronous training that's something that you get through, say, WebJunction or using our niche academy, live training, conferences, etc. And it's any of those options you can check off. And then any kind of factors that you feel influences your ability to provide allow for staff to get trained. Is it a timing thing? Is it a staffing issue? Um, does the staff not really have an interest in some of that training? So there are some options for you to choose there. Section 6 is again asking about your digital collections and your repository. So again, no changes on this. It's whether you have a digital collection of items that you've digitized. So we're looking at, those that have maybe scanned newspapers, yearbooks, microfilm. It sounds obvious, but I'll point it out. We're not asking about ebooks. We're just talking about local items that you have digitized for your library, and what kind of access they have. Are they available online? Are they in a repository? And then also what kind of equipment you have for digitization. Section 7 is asking about your electronic resources. So what influences what you purchase for your databases, and then what you're allotting from your budget. So it's a percentage, and then just a general change from last year. So we're just looking to see, are people spending more money, about the same, less? What kind of decisions are being made for electronic resources? And that would include ebooks as well. Alrighty. Section 8, again, no changes. Easy peasy, your ILL statistics. So for the majority of you, you're just entering in the items that you receive from Rhode Island libraries or that you provided to Rhode Island libraries. And then those items that you received from out-of-state libraries or provided to out-of-state libraries. Again, public libraries, your information will be coming in automatically pre-filled from your public library survey. So you'll see that it's grayed out and will not let you make any changes here. So only the academics, the special, and the schools will be putting in this information. If you received an item from a Massachusetts library through delivery, it is still an out-of-state library. We don't care, and I say that with a smile, how you submitted the request or how it came to you or how it was shipped. We just care where the library is. We want to get a feel for how much sharing is being done among Lori libraries and Rhode Island libraries, and then how much we're sharing and using other state resources. All righty. And again, those dates, we're looking at July 1st from 2024 to just this past June. So last fiscal year. And then we're in the last two sections, and this is what actually will certify the library, is choosing yes to indicate compliance with each of the Lori standards. Um, again, there's no changes to any of these. You're just acknowledging yes. So if there's a standard that you do not meet, for example, you're a school library and you do not yet have your MLS, because that is how we define a librarian, um, you would need to submit a waiver for that. And there's a link to that process here, and you will look at it as well online. So again, you're choosing yes to indicate compliance, that you operate according to these laws regarding libraries, whether it's local, state, or federal, that you have a librarian that is staffing your library for the amount of hours dictated in these standards, that you have interlibrary loan and service policies approved by library administration, and they need to be posted on your website. And sometimes these interlibrary loan and service policies are sort of combined. Um, a lot of the RILink libraries share their interlibrary loan policy. They may use theirs as opposed to having their own district policy, but they need to be posted online, and you will be asked to provide that website address. Um, and then we check them. So when you put those website addresses in the survey, just double check and make sure they're actually linking to the page that they should be. You also need to indicate compliance with the required hours of service for your library type, that you have a website with certain information that's required, your hours, your contact information, your online catalog online, available to your patrons, that you do not charge usage fees to other Lori libraries. So again, you choose yes to indicate that you do not charge. Um, so don't say no, I don't charge, because then I'll have to send it back to you. So you can say that you meet the standard by choosing yes, and that you have staff that is familiar with all of the Lori standards, and that the director makes sure that there is someone in the library who is executing all of the Lori tasks. And then finally, the last section is the interlibrary loan code, which just deals with following the guidelines with relating to interlibrary loan. Um, the scope of ILL, like what we allowed to send, the limitations on not providing certain things, um, responsibilities with the requesting libraries for supplying libraries, making sure that your ILL records are confidential, which also involves being able to dispose of them at the end of the loan. So there's no need to hold on to ILL requests for forever. If you look at the state record retention requirements, once the loan is over, you can dispose of those records. And then again, complying with restrictions on fees. And there's a link to each of those standards in the survey. So this is just another look at what this certifications collection will look like in LibPass. Again, public libraries can choose the collection that they're working on, whether it be the summer reading or the public library survey. For non-public libraries, you will only be accessing the resource sharing certification. You'll see your library name listed in the library field, and then just always make sure that you're entering your data for the 2025 period. All right, so once you submit the survey, we will take a look at it. We'll make sure that it's complete, that there don't seem to be any anomalies or misinformation. And then if need be, I'll reach out and ask for any kind of clarification or corrections. And once that happens, we'll also need to unlock your survey that will allow you to go back in and make those corrections. And then you would need to resubmit, and it would then lock again. Once everything is reviewed and seems to be correct, we will process the certification form using those acknowledgments for the standards and the ILL code to the director for signature. Um, Again, public libraries, that will wait until you have completed the process for the public library survey. And then if you are a school library, once you're certified, we will start adding schools back on to delivery the week of September 15th. And then every 2 weeks, there's a rotating ad for the school libraries. So the sooner the school libraries certify, the sooner they get back on delivery. And we will be notifying Optima usually the end of the week prior to the start of schools being added. So for example, if you were a school library and you submitted your certification on September 15th, you're probably not going to be getting back on delivery for the next 2 weeks because we add schools on every 2 weeks. And that also means that schools will then be eligible for interlibrary loan at the time they're eligible for delivery, and that includes the OLIS library cards that they can use to request materials from public libraries. And all of that information is communicated to libraries once you're at that point. All righty. So what I'd like to do is stop sharing there, and I don't see any kind of questions, and there's nothing in the chat. So let's see. I would like to. Alrighty, and we are going to jump into LibPass, and I just need to get to my browser. Alrighty. So it looks like everybody should be looking at the certification page on our website. Lauren asked if our ILL contact in June, should we update it to the new name? Yes. So throughout the year, even though, we hear about staff changes and we update our database, when we get all of that, the resource sharing contacts in the certification, we will then automatically upload that to our database and it repopulates it. So yes, we would like the certification to reflect the current status of who your contacts are. And then if they change after certification, then if you can reach out to me and then I'll update the database. Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, so looking at the certification page on our website, actually let's go back to, and let me log out so you are looking at it as I do. So I don't know who has seen our slightly new revamped page, but as you scroll down, we've got resources for libraries and resources for the public, and then some service highlights for the fiscal year. But you can get right to delivery, you can get right to interlibrary loan for here, but we are going to go to resource sharing because that gets us to the higher level of everything related to the Library of Rhode Island. So anything related to certification, delivery, interlibrary loan, etc. So we're going to go to certification process. So again, an overview of certification. There is a link to LibPass, also a link to the LibGuide for certification, and information about the components of the process, as well as a link to the waiver request form should it be needed. Anytime you are on a resource sharing page, whether it's delivery or ILL, you will find links to those LibGuides in the bottom left-hand corner. So you can always get to certification and the resource sharing working group from there. So what we're going to do is jump into LibPass, and I'm going to change here, and we're going to, oops, maybe not. Whoops. Let's, uh, we'll use this account. All righty. So again, when you log in as a school or let me put it as a non-public library, you only have the resource sharing collection. There are no options, but I needed to change it to the correct period. So here we are in 2025. And again, Chester Barrows School, the code is grayed out and the name is grayed out because it's pre-populated. So there's no option to do any kind of data entry here. So you would just choose, again, the correct library type, and any information that appears to the right of the field is last year's entry. If it's a new question, obviously there will be no data there. In this case, Chester Barrows has not certified in several years, so there is no previous year data here. If, for example, say for Lauren at Coventry, her information would still be listed. She can copy and paste it in for this year, but it doesn't automatically transfer. So you can either copy and paste it in, or you can type it in. But the data has to be entered manually each year. So again, your contact information for your 4 key points, the accessibility question, so whether or not you're a Talking Books institutional member, your accessibility guidelines, so are these types of features available on your website? So for this, you can choose yes, no, or unsure, but they are required. Assistive technology, so these are either you have it or you don't, so you can just click the provided if you offer it to your patrons. If there's anything else that you'd like to offer that you do provide, you can indicate it in the other hardware option. There's a question about whether or not staff has been trained with assistive technology, so either yes or no. Next section is your equipment and inventory. So the total number of desktops, laptops, and tablets that are provided in the library, and then of those total, how many are for public use. And then scrolling down, again, similarly as there was about the assistive technology, what kind of services and equipment does the library provide? And again, this is what was consolidated with the makerspace equipment. So, we've added crafting tools. So do you provide those for patrons in the library? The only option for circulating is whether or not you have mobile hotspots, and it's indicated here as a circulating option. So again, there's an option to include other technologies that you want to specify that you provide for your patrons. Now, as you're going through this, if this gets kind of clunky because there are so many sections, On the left, there's a navigation tool where we can close all of those sections or we can open them all. Um, Sometimes it gets a little busy. Um, so you can look at each one individually if you choose. So if we had finished with equipment and inventory and we were now moving on to IT and support, we can click on that one and then just open it. And again, we can click on it again to close it. So scrolling through, again, these are the same questions that we've asked in prior years about your IT technology support. Again, who's helping you manage your network and your software and your hardware. If you're a OSL library, we're asking you to not include the support that you get from OSL. So do you contract an outside company? Do you have an employee? That's the sort of person that we're looking for that response there. Um, Again, whether or not you provide certain topics of instruction to your patrons, and then you can designate or list up to 3 of other topics that you provide on a regular basis. So these are the group instructional topics, and then whether or not you also provide one-on-one training. Again, this is the new section this year on staff training. So how do staff receive training? And it's just you can just choose yes to opt in, and at any level. Is it onboarding staff? Is it professional development? Um, However your staff is receiving training, and then any other ways that you may be providing those opportunities to staff. And then again, a new question is those factors influencing staff training. So is limited staff capacity, coverage, hours, competing priorities, is that a concern? Is it hard to just keep up with what you can offer and technology? Um, are you not sure where you can find quality resources for training? And then any other factors that influence your ability to provide staff training. The next section, again, is digitization in your repository. So again, no changes. So whether or not you have a repository, and that controls, what questions you see. So if you don't have a repository, then you're not seeing the questions about the repository. Um, so don't be surprised if you choose no, these questions disappear. Um, and then if you do have a repository, is it hosted locally? Do you have it on a third-party server? Do you participate in the national newspaper program? Again, these are the same questions that we've asked this past year about your repository. Its URL. So how do people find it? And then what is in your repository? So do you have newspapers, memorabilia, yearbooks? If you're an academic institution, do you have scholarly research that's been digitized? So any kind of content, and then whether or not it's accessible to the public. So you may have it available, but only in-house, or it's on, it's digitized, but it's not available for the public to access. And then what kind of equipment do you also have in your library to allow you to do that digitization? And when we're looking at the professional, this scanner, we're not talking about, say, the little wands that a public could use, or we're looking for big equipment, so your professional scanners. Um, but in thinking that some may be using, a copy machine for scanner, um, you could say that you're using that, but maybe put a note here in other, just to allow, or a note. You can actually put a note here that says that you're using a copy machine for scanner as opposed to a giant overhead book scanner. Um, and then your electronic resources. So again, we eliminated all of the database specific questions for subscriptions, and we're just asking about some of the factors that influence the decisions that you make about which databases you subscribe to. So again, choosing yes or no as to whether or not that is a factor that influences your decision. Um, Again, what percentage of your materials budget is spent and allocated for electronic resources, and that includes your databases that you subscribe to. So your Hoopla or your ebooks or any kind of streaming platforms and online learning platforms that you subscribe to. So any kind of e-content um, that is above and beyond what you provide to the consortium. And then this new question is asking, how has your spending for this year compared to last year? So has it increased? Has it decreased? Is it about the same? Or maybe you're not really sure. Um, And then finally, the ILL statistics. So again, this was a school, so they are required to fill in their information. This is not pre-filled for them. So again, 4 buckets of received items from Rhode Island and out of state, and items provided to Rhode Island libraries and out of state libraries. And then finally, the standards and regulations and the ILL code. So again, you're just choosing yes to acknowledge that you meet the standard, which is outlined right here. And for some of them, there may be an additional piece of information that's asked from you in addition to acknowledging the standard. So for example, in standard B, we're asking which of your Lori staff members is meeting that degreed librarian. So is it the director? Is it your ILL contact? And again, that varies depending upon the size of the library. If you're a small library or a school library, it may be just one and all the same person. But for larger libraries, your resource sharing contact may be, your ILL contact and have that the degree. Um, Standard C is where we're asking about your ILL and service policies. So there are 3 parts to this. Again, you're choosing yes if you meet the standard and that you have an ILL and service policies that are posted online, and then we're asking you to provide those websites. D is about your hours of service. So here it outlines how many hours a week the library needs to be open. And for public libraries, there is a link to the minimum standards because it changes based on the size of your library. So again, there's that extra added question of how many hours are you open a week, in addition to acknowledging that, yes, we meet the standard. And again, this is one of those things where some of the school or the public libraries may not be open what they are supposed to be open according to the standards. So if you choose no, that would indicate needing a waiver. And for some of the public libraries, if you are already submitting a waiver for your public library standard, you don't need to duplicate it here for the Lori standards because they overlap. Um, Standard E is asking about your website. So for that may be a LibGuide, it could be like web page, or it could be your regular web page. So yes, we have one, and please provide the URL. Um, and again, also for your catalog, we need to see just the link for your catalog. And again, that catalog link should be on your website. So we're not looking for the generic, say, catalog link for Ocean State Libraries. We want to see the one that's on your website, um, so that we can ensure that the patrons can find the catalog on your website. Again, the standard about not charging other Lori libraries for interlibrary loan. So again, yes, we do not charge, not no, we do not charge. So just make sure that nobody's charging anybody else from Lori for interlibrary loans materials, so you would choose yes there. However, that does not mean that you cannot charge for loans for out-of-state materials, and it does not apply for shipping for materials. But again, if it's a Lori library, things are coming through delivery, so there should be no charges incurred for any part of that loan. Um, H is just indicating that there are library staff that are familiar with all of the Lori standards, the ILL code, and any kind of applicable policies and procedures. And then I is indicating that the library complies with designated a staff member, and it has to be a paid staff member that executes all of these Lori tasks. And again, you're just choosing yes, that someone is um, performing that task and then outlining each specific task. And then finally, the interlibrary loan code. So acknowledging that the library abides by and follows those 5 aspects of the code from the standards. And again, choosing yes. Does anybody have any questions with the survey in LibPass? Okay. So once you are done and then you've checked your information, you would then hit submit and lock. And if there was a question that's a required question, or there's an error that there's a text that doesn't make sense, you'll see a red error message and it will alert you to what needs to be corrected. If you don't see any kind of indicator that there is anything that needs review, it will just submit, and then we will be alerted here at OLIS that your submission is done for the year and it's ready for review. All right, I am going to stop sharing that. I don't see any questions in the chat. I do. All right. So does anybody have any questions for me? Again, it's pretty straightforward. There really haven't been many changes. But I'm happy to answer anything that you may come up as you go along and actually complete the certification. So always feel free to call, email, and we'll be happy to help with any questions you have. All righty. Well, it looks like everybody is good. So if nobody has any questions, I'm going to stop the recording.